Shifting regulations causing confusion and concern for New York's slowly growing legal cannabis industry. The advice from state experts ahead of a major deadline. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm Solomon Saida in Albany. Well, after a slow-moving legal process, now in less than 2 weeks, patients will be able to grow their own cannabis for medical use. This comes as the deadline for applying for a retail cannabis license approaches. Let's take a closer look at the rapidly approaching important dates in the marijuana industry. September 26th, that is the deadline to apply for a retail cannabis dispensary license. New York hoping to begin retail sales to those ages 21 and older by the end of this year. Then on October 5th, medical cannabis patients and caregivers certified through the Office of Cannabis Management will be able to grow it even at home.
There's nothing like being able to take control of your medicine, know exactly what's going into it.
We need to recognize cannabis has real benefits and can improve others' quality of life.
And we are pleased to be joined by Chris Alexander, the Executive Director of the Office of Cannabis Management. Mr. Alexander, we really appreciate your time. We know you're very busy right now because the deadline to apply for those retail dispensary licenses this weekend, September 26th. Goes without saying, this is an up-and-coming industry. Did you or have you seen robust interest in applicants?
Well, thanks for having me. And yes, we are very, very excited of the interest, the energy that's come back from the community, from across New York, from communities across the state. So far, we have, really spent the time doing on-the-ground education and engagement with community members. We've utilized every outlet that we could to engage with them, provided every resource that we could to prepare them, and including webinars and step-by-step instructions on completing the application. And the engagement to this point has been really exciting. So I'm really happy with where we are. We just got to keep finalizing this process.
Yeah, and Chris, you kind of touched on it there. This is a very intricate process. Some of the applicants we spoke with, they said that they, despite all the education, they just really were not prepared for just how complicated this became. One applicant said they had to hire a team of consultants. Was this by design to, and I'm going to use a bad pun here, to weed out applicants who maybe were not as serious as other applicants?
No, and honestly, I mean, we went through great lengths to make sure that it was an application individuals could complete on their own, making it a fully online application with tip boxes, and even had staff members, record themselves going through the application so that demonstration was available to our applicants. We know that this is, a really highly regulated space. Cannabis applications for operators across the country are notoriously difficult and, costly. We provided a more affordable option, one that folks could navigate, and, the large sum of the feedback has been that folks were able to navigate. That it took some time, as these things do, but that they were able to navigate and get to completion.
Chris, do you anticipate that you will get more applications as we head through the weekend and that deadline, or do you think most of them have already been submitted and you can, start to begin your evaluation process right after that deadline?
We're definitely going to get some more through the weekend. I mean, that's been consistent with the previous applications that we've done. We've now, licensed cultivators and processors. And of course, as we get close to that deadline, those numbers kick up quite a bit. And so we're preparing for a rush through this weekend and going to hunker down and go through what we received to find the best operators for New York's initial cannabis market.
Now, Chris, you have repeatedly said that the emphasis for this is on small to medium-sized businesses. What's the thought process there?
Well, it's really just how we've structured our law, right? And the cannabis law that is currently in place is one that is designed to achieve that goal, by prohibiting, vertical integration, which is really the mandate that folks have to both cultivate all of the cannabis that they're growing, all the cannabis that would be in their supply chain, process it and sell it directly to consumers. It is quite a big mandate on an operator to be able to have the infrastructure, the employee power to do all of that. And so by nature of breaking up that market and having folks choose where they participate, we've created more opportunity. And so that's what, when I speak to that, that's what I'm speaking to, is the acknowledgement of what the law in front of us has dictated that we do in setting up this market.
So we've talked about it a few times here. Those applications due this weekend, then the evaluations start. How soon could this industry be up and running? When can folks expect to be able to, go down the street, get in the car, go a few miles, and be able to shop for legal recreational adult use marijuana?
Well, we've been saying this whole time, and that timeline hasn't changed, that, we will have adult use sales in New York State before the end of the year. Now, for the full, 150 dispensaries to come online, will take some time after that, a couple of months to finalize construction, but we will have some adult use sales in New York State before the end of 2022. As the market, finalizes or the market fully establishes itself post 2022, we'll see, and folks will have much more options in terms of choosing dispensaries and identifying, their favorite spots to go. That'll be throughout the course of 2023.
And Chris, what about those who are using medical marijuana, or at least marijuana for medical purposes? We know that very soon they will be able to grow marijuana in their homes. How is that going to be regulated?
Well, we've put out now for several rounds of comments, engaging with the public, regulations for that program, really speaking to how cannabis can be safely grown in the home, away from young people, from pets, and away from public view. And of course, limiting some of the environmental impacts, strain on the grid as well, for production. So we know that there is quite a bit of learning that'll have to occur here as we get more patients cultivating at home. What we provided, though, is some safety tips for those patients who are registered in our program. And folks can go to our website to see those full details that speak to those regulations.
Oh, Chris Alexander, the Executive Director of the Office of Cannabis Management. Goes without saying, you are very busy right now with all these deadlines upcoming. We certainly appreciate your time today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
The legal trouble for former President Trump continues as investigations against him heat up. As New York's Attorney General files a lawsuit against the Trump Organization, new documents will be brought into the ongoing case from the search at the president's Mar-a-Lago estate. We have a complete breakdown on the way. If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email Empire State Weekly, and you can also find us on Twitter. And welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm Solomon Syed in Albany. Well, the legal troubles continue for former President Donald Trump. The former president facing renewed pressure from officials in both ongoing criminal and civil investigations. Now, this week, a federal appeals court allowing the Justice Department to use some of the documents seized from the former president's estate in Florida last month. A judge had temporarily stopped investigators from using the documents as a special master reviewed them. Then on the civil side, New York's Attorney General suing the president, 3 of his children, and the Trump Organization alleging business fraud. The AG saying the Trump Organization inflated the value of their properties to gain favorable loans.
Claiming you have money that you do not have does not amount to the art of the deal. It's the art of the steal.
And we're joined right now by Ryan McCall, a lawyer with Tully Rinke, to break down the allegations that the former president is facing. And Ryan, right off the bat, a lot of people wondering, including myself, these are very serious allegations levied by the Attorney General. Why is she going with the civil suit as opposed to criminal charges in this case?
So what I think the Attorney General is trying to do at this point is really nail it down on the civil side. The reason being is typically in civil cases, there's a lower standard of evidence versus in a criminal setting, you have to show beyond a reasonable doubt. Whereas more in the civil side, it's the preponderance of the evidence, so to speak, or more likely than not, which is why I think with a lot of these allegations, it could be easier for the Attorney General to go the civil route compared to the criminal route.
Now, according to the AG, the former president allegedly inflated his assets so that he could gain some favorable deals, get more capital to then keep building his so-called empire. And then on the flip side, he would depreciate the size of some of these properties to get favorable tax breaks. From the president's side, in trying to argue his case, is there a way to say, well, these were just accounting errors, or we didn't measure properly? How difficult will it be for the Attorney General to say, no, this goes beyond mistakes. You actually went through a process to accomplish this?
So with this specific instance, there is approximately 200 different allegations of property inflation and deflation. So what the Attorney General is going to need to do is connect the dots and show that this is a pattern. This isn't just a one-off, we misvalued one or two properties. This has been a consistent pattern by the Trump organization, led by former President Trump, in order to purposely defraud banks and the taxes for the government.
How do his children play into this? We know that they are players in the Trump organization. Why go after his children in addition to Donald Trump?
So I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the president's children have acted as members of the board, chairs in various organizations. So they are considered leaders within the organization, which is why I think the Attorney General is trying to isolate these specific directors and prevent them from serving on future boards or working with the president in his business dealings within the state of New York.
How difficult is it to prove? You know, you mentioned that there is a lower standard when it comes to civil matters, but how difficult is it to prove? You're talking about boards, they're on boards, they're in leadership positions. Former President Trump was at the head of the Trump organization. How difficult will it be to prove, to say, well, this person was at the very top, but they had their tentacles in everything. They were calling the shots on every single transaction.
And you just hit it right on the head. This is a very difficult thing to prove. You're going to need emails. You're going to need to see thousands of documents in order to really connect the dots, showing that one of the president's children, I would say, is calling the shots, saying, you need to do this, you need to certify that, which is going to be a very difficult thing given what we've seen so far.
You talk about thousands of documents. We're talking about 200 allegations here, so many properties to come through. A civil case like this, if it even makes it to trial, let's forget a settlement, how long would this case take to play out?
This could go on for years. There's going to be substantial discovery. There's going to need to be depositions. I'm sure both sides are going to be filing various motions in order to either dismiss or enforce certain terms of orders that will be entered. So it'll be very interesting to see how far this goes, but this could go on for years.
The president has claimed that this is politically motivated. From a legal standpoint, does that hurt the AG's case in the court of public opinion?
I think it really has to do with the individual. Given the current allegations and how the Attorney General has gone after the president over the last few years, it's definitely going to become a political issue, but both sides do have valid arguments.
What is the Attorney General's end game here? We know what she's asking. She wants them banned from doing certain business in New York. She wants some of the assets returned in the term of fines, more than $200 million. That's what she's asking. We know that in some of these cases there end up being settlements. So from your expert opinion, what do you think the Attorney General is hoping to get as an outcome here, best case scenario?
I think the best case scenario for the Attorney General would be if it went to trial and they were to prevail. I think what is more likely, as is most civil cases that are brought between both private and public entities, is they may likely reach a settlement, which could be a meet in the middle, so to speak, where the former president would agree to pay a certain amount of fines, maybe restrict some of the businesses that he does, and comply with some general accounting principles, which are typically only used in public corporations.
And we talked about this a little bit, but from the former president's side, what are his arguments and what might his best argument be in terms of beating these allegations?
I think one of the things is going to be he had no knowledge if there was misrepresentations. I think one of the other arguments is going to be this is real estate. Real estate can appreciate and depreciate in any given year for really any given reason. So a lot of it has to do with the individual appraiser that was certifying a lot of these records, but I think those are going to be the two arguments that the former president's going to hang his hat on.
Let's maybe transition to the FBI raid at Mar-a-Lago. How, if at all, does this case factor into that one?
As of right now, it's going to be tough to say because we are going to need to see what documents are being released, such as what have they gotten from the former president that may be able to connect the dots. but more likely than not, that's really going to be a wait and see approach.
Now, so far, the president's request for a special master hasn't really gone in his favor. The special master already using that famous cliche, you can't have your cake and eat it too, when it comes to saying whether documents were classified or declassified. The president has come out and said now rather infamously, well, as long as I thought even in my head that I wanted these to be declassified, that makes them declassified. So things not going the way the former president may have thought it would with the special master in that case.
Yeah, and that's really just going to be another situation where we're going to need to see what exactly were these documents that we're talking about. Were they declassified? Is there any sort of exceptions that may apply? Right now, I'm not sure what they are alleging, but again, that's really going to be more of a wait and see type of thing.
And as we look to see what happens next, what's kind of some of the timeline that's been outlined in terms of when the special master will issue his rulings?
My understanding is that could be coming within the next few months, but again, they do have a pretty delineated availability to make those decisions.
Ryan McCall with Tully Renke, we appreciate your time. Very interesting, fascinating topic.
Thank you very much for having me.
We appreciate it. All right, well, as New York City continues to relax its COVID safety restrictions, one remains in place, and it's causing some tension. You're going to hear from city workers as they continue to push back against the ongoing vaccine requirement as officials allow private workers to go without the vaccine. If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email Empire State Weekly, and you can also find us on Twitter. And welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm Solomon Syed in Albany. Well, New York City is now dropping most of its remaining COVID-19 vaccine mandates, albeit with one big exception. City workers will still need to be vaccinated. Correspondent Henry Rossoff has the details.
We think it's imperative to send the right message and lead by example.
Mayor Eric Adams says that's why he's keeping the city's COVID-19 vaccine mandate for public workers. He made the comments just prior to getting his Omicron vaccine booster and says he hopes the public worker mandate will continue to encourage private businesses to put in place their own requirements, even though they will no longer be subject to a mandate themselves come November 1st. At least 1,400 city workers have already been fired for not complying with the mandate, with hundreds of appeals still pending. At least 18 firefighters and one FDNY officer were let go, with many more retiring early in response to the policy, according to the Uniformed Firefighters Association. The union was one of many representing public employees that ripped the decision by the Adams administration.
Since the very beginning, we've been told we were going to follow the science. There is no science that shows the difference between public and private sector employees, how it's more dangerous for one group and not as dangerous for the other.
When that very question was put to City Health Commissioner Ashwin Vasan, he offered more of a philosophical explanation of the rule changes.
It's important to not see these things in isolation and then say, well, what's the narrow rationale for this one decision, and see it as disconnected from the rest? Because we are in a process of transition. We're no longer in this emergency phase of the pandemic.
And we want not only a rational answer, but an answer that's good enough to actually be firing people.
City Council Minority Leader Joe Borelli has been outspoken for some time now against mandates. He and other colleagues on the council say they will continue to push for an end to all vaccine requirements and the rehiring of fired workers, especially with many city agencies still understaffed.
Look at the MTA. The MTA doesn't have a vaccine mandate, so they're operating under a completely different set of rules. We don't see mass shutdowns. We don't see mass deaths. We don't see these major problems.
Thank you, Henry. And now to the latest fallout surrounding New York's new gun laws. Despite the governor's office saying that historical reenactments with guns can continue, more are actually being canceled over concerns with how the law applies. The governor's office saying, quote, these laws allow historical reenactments to occur, and there should be no concern otherwise. Despite that statement, though, some reenactors don't feel comfortable out of fear of violating the law. Now, under the law, individuals can carry and use antique weapons that have been rendered inoperable as part of any military reenactment event.
Antique firearm, as I said before, pertains to pistols and revolvers, not long arms. But also the word inoperable is a problem, because in order to conduct reenactments, the muskets, the rifles, they need to be operable.
Now, those who take part in reenactments say that they would like the law to be changed back to how it was. All right, stick around. We're going to be back with a look at the week ahead in just one moment. In the meantime, if you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email Empire State Weekly, and you can also find us on Twitter. And finally, here on Empire State Weekly, another industry we are closely following is online sports betting, with the expansion of mobile betting here in New York and also soon to be Massachusetts. Next week, we're going to follow up as an industry expert lays out the regulations coming to those who run the operations as the number of interested gamblers goes up across the nation. Now, from all of us here on Empire State Weekly, I'm Solomon Syed in Albany. See you again next week. And don't forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over New York State. Here's the full schedule of Empire State Weekly on 10 television stations across New York.